Hi people! As I'm sure you know, there is one boss in Ankh-Raj that needs to be frozen. You do this by hitting it with enough frost damage attacks. If you are a melee character, you're looking for weapons with frost damage procs, such as the Cold Rage Dagger or Hammer of the Northern Wind. Now, it's not too easy to find data on the proc chances of those weapons, and so I decided to do some testing myself. In this video, I'll go over the Dagger from Razor Van Downs, the Hammer of the Northern Wind, the Silver Blade from Scarlet Monastery, the Frost Oil Weapon Oil, and the Enchant Icy Shield, and look at what the respective proc chances seem to be. This is done in order to find the best weapons for Viscidous. As for now, the only information I've been able to find comes from the former Lightbringer private server, and it might be good to have some data for Classic as well. The way I tested these weapons was by attacking the servants of Demon Guy in Blasted Lands. These mobs can't be killed unless you activate a nearby crystal for a quest, meaning you can hit them forever. They also go standby mode for about 20 seconds after reaching about 7 or 0% health, so they are ideal for this. Before looking at the numbers, let's compare the three weapons themselves. The Hammer of the Northern Wind is a level 49 epic world BOE mace with a 2.1 attack speed. It is held in main hand. The Cold Rage Dagger drops from the last boss of Razor Van Downs with about a 20% drop rate. It can be farmed rather easily as a decent geared level 60 warrior, rogue or maybe hunter. This weapon has an attack speed of 1.5 and has the same frost damage proc as the Hammer. The proc rate differs, however. It is also one-handed. The Silver Blade drops off trash in Scarlet Monastery, besides the graveyard. The BOE Dagger requires level 32 and has a 1.4 weapon attack speed. The proc of the weapon blasts the target for 45 frost damage. I did 4 tests for each weapon, getting off as many attacks as I could and checking the amount of frost procs compared to the amount of melee attacks. I then took the average of those 4 proc values. In total, I did about 600 to 800 attacks with each weapon, which is not enough to determine the proc rate down to the 0.1%, but it is however enough to show that the Hammer does indeed have a higher proc rate than the Dagger. That is not the only thing that matters, however. First, the Dagger, and more specifically the Cold Rage Dagger. The first test showed a total of 135 hits and 7 procs, meaning 5.1% proc rate. The second test, 115 hits and 7 procs, hence 7.8% proc rate. The third test, 99 hits, 8 procs and hence 8% proc rate. And fourth, 125 hits and 7 procs, hence 5.6% proc rate. This gives us an average of 6.26% proc rate. For the Mace, I got the following numbers. The first test, well, 0 of anything because I realized my weapon skill with maces was at 1. For the first real test, I got 93 hits and 8 procs, meaning 8.6% proc rate. The second test, I got 92 hits and 10 procs, meaning 10.8% proc rate. The third test was 92 hits and 5 procs, meaning 5.43% proc rate. The fourth test, 115 hits and 9 procs, meaning 7.8% proc rate. This gives us an average of about 8.15% proc rate. That's about a 2% difference in proc rate between the Cold Rage Dagger and the Hammer of Northern Wind. We're moving on to the Silver Blade. This weapon is really subpar compared to the others and shouldn't even be considered for the frost proc chance. The first test, 225 hits and 6 procs, meaning 2.6% proc rate. Second test, 238 hits, 8 procs, 3.36% proc rate. And finally, the third test, 218 hits and 3 procs, 1.3%. The Dagger shouldn't be considered whatsoever for this job, and I also wasted 100 gold on buying it. Its average proc rate is 2.4%. Continuing, we will look at a white dagger with the Icy Shield weapon enchant. Note however that the Icy Shield does not deal any damage, but slows the target. Likely it will not count towards a thrust attack. Either way, I found the following proc rates. First test 125 attacks and 3 procs, 2.4%. Second test 111 attacks, 3 procs, 2.7%. Third test 170 hits, 5 procs, 2.9%. And we seem to land at about 2.7%. It is possible, however, that this enchant is worthless since it doesn't deal any frost damage but just has a frost effect. Next up is the frost oil. The frost oil is the most important part of this. As stated on the tooltip, it has a 10% proc rate. I went ahead and tested it anyway, and with 298 hits I got 16 procs, meaning 5.4%. That's very likely just by chance, however. To end the testing, I put frost oil on both cold rage daggers, just to see how many procs I could get and to make sure there is no weird interference between the weapon and oil. In case you didn't know, the frost oil proc actually doesn't slow the target, meanwhile the weapon proc does. And so, as you can see, they can both proc. And so let's actually compare the weapons. I will leave out Silver Blade completely, since its proc rate does not seem to be even half of the Cold Rage Dagger. With basic weapon speed, the hammer gets about 2.33 procs per minute. This is without taking Flurry or any ability into consideration. The dagger gets 2.5 procs per minute in the same situation. However, we should take into account the fact that you will spam abilities every global cooldown, at least if you're a hunter or a warrior. The hammer then gets 5.58 procs per minute, and the dagger gets about 5 procs per minute. The biggest factor, however, is whether you are using frost oil, which you should. Taking frost oil into account and using abilities every global cooldown, you get 12.4 procs per minute with the hammer and 13 procs per minute with the dagger. As you can see, the difference is quite small. The dagger seems to get almost 5% more procs per minute compared to the mace, supposing you use frost oil. If you aren't using frost oil, the hammer gets about 11% more procs per minute. Obviously, I still haven't taken Flurry or Slice and Dice into account, but they won't matter when you compare the two weapons, as both weapons benefit equally. If you were to maximize things, you could get a total of 19.5 procs per minute. This is done by dual wielding the Cold Rage daggers, attacking with an ability every global cooldown and using frost oil. This is without Flurry or Slice and Dice. Note however that you can't have Wind Fury or weapon oils at the same time. I hope this video helped you melee boys and hunters decide which weapons to get. Personally, I'd recommend just getting 2 Cold Rage daggers. They are easy to farm and have an okay drop rate of about 20% in Razor Fan Downs. There are still some weapons that might be worth testing. Darrow Spike from a Quest Chain and Scholomance, the Glacial Blade from Alterac Valley Revered Reputation, Winter's Bite from Trash inside Sunken Temple, and maybe Bone Chill Hammer from Rast the Frost Whisperer and Scholomance as well. I'm not sure how many of those weapons I'll be able to get my hands on, but if I do get them, I'll make sure to test them. Make sure to subscribe to not miss any of those videos. That was all for this video. Like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more. If you have any questions or wanna say hi, I stream over at twitch.tv/NeceriumClouds. This was all for now. I'll be back hopefully soon with another video. Until then, see ya!